Okay, so you can see down here we've got two templates and they're just freehand and then cut out. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to double thickness these templates. So if you just take a little bit of tape, okay, and just whip them around the edges, what it'll do is just stop this from folding up as easy, just gives it a bit more thickness. Okay, and hopefully you should still be able to peel them off in one, but it will just help hold the fin shape in position. So what we're going to do first, we're going to do a little effect called shadowing. So if we just grab the fin itself is going to come down and it's going to lay in just about where this join is for the actual gear door. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to put in a tiny little shadow in here as well. So I'm going to place it literally just on the gear door itself. Now my ones are probably a little bit bigger than the real ones here. Okay, so we've just placed that in, just got a tiniest little part of it is on the other area. Okay, so we're on there like that. We're going to take our grey and we're just going to make a tiny shadow effect on there. Now obviously this is a very wet mix, so actually what I'm going to do is just add a tiny little bit of paint to this to thicken it up just a little bit because it's a little bit too thin, which was great for doing our blending work, but when you're actually trying to lay down colour you need it a little bit thicker. So we just pop that in there like that. We just grab a sheet again, we'll just pop this down here, blow through till we get to that thicker paint. There we go, you can hear the difference as soon as we get to it. The airbrush slows down without pulling that off. Okay, so we're just going to come in and say we're going to put a shadow onto this. Okay, cut into air to dry it off. Okay, so then we come away. Hopefully we've made a little shadow of the actual fin itself. Okay, then what we're going to do in a moment, once that's totally dry, we're going to come over, just place it a tiny bit down and then do it in the hard blue, so then obviously it stands right out. We're going to do the same with the dorsal fin on top, but obviously we need that to dry, so it's going to take a couple of minutes for that to dry and then we'll come back. So we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. Now what you could do if you're clever is try and reverse this and just hold it in place. If you're not that happy with it, you could just stick it, do another one and stick it to the other side. Okay, so there we go, that's dry. So what we've done now, we've placed on a new mask for the other side. Okay, so what we're going to do, we've got the original blue from that top side loaded in. We're just going to blow in over the top very lightly, quite a thick mix. Dry that off and then fingers crossed we should end up with something like that, which is our fin. So by the time we've got our gills in and everything else, hopefully we're going to start taking shape. So what we can do now is, if we're happy with it, have a look round, any little adjustments you want to make them now, okay? And then we can go along, unmask it, and we can get the actual shark's fin on the top. Okay, so there he is, that one's on. Bring it in a little bit. There he is in at the top here. So what we're going to do then, just come in, frame again, and we're just going to blow this in. Now I've taken it to really about the top of the riveting. It's a bit bigger than the one on the instructions. Okay, just make sure you get to the bottoms as well. Now there might be a little bit of change in difference. Normally you would wait obviously, but me being impulsive as ever. And there we go, that's our shark's fin on the top, which is pretty close to the other one. Now obviously, as I said, needs a little bit of blending work, but we can take care of that in a moment. So we're just going to reverse it, put it on the other side. Okay, so there we go, we're really looking the part now. So what we're going to do, my usual thing of being totally impatient, we're going to unmask it now just to have a look to see what we've got. So he says, doing as I say, not as I do. Wait until this is all totally dry before you unmask it, normally, but as I say, I'm just going to run through because I really want to see what it looks like and how it came out. So there we go, we just whip these off. Okay, so we'll see the last two under here. And although we haven't got the shark's mouth or gills on yet, I think it'll should give us a fair old representation of what we're after. It says it's stuck totally to death with this stuff. And there we go. That's it. That's what we've been trying to achieve with our shark's head. And I think, as I say, once we get the gill slits in and things like that, we're pretty much a good representation of what we're trying to achieve here. And with the camo, I must admit, it really stands out and looks really, really nice. This side, to be honest, I think it looks slightly better. I've got more of a mottly type of shark effect, but then the eye, I think, will really make it come to life. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually give this one a bit of a break because I've been handling it a little bit too much. Got a couple of fingerprints I've made on it, which are a bit of a nightmare. So I'm going to have to take care of those, get rid of them, blow them in and everything else. Let it stand for a couple of hours, let it go off. I'm going to give it a coat of future or clear coat just to protect it all, so we're at this stage and I'm happy with it. And then we can get on with some getting the gear onto it, getting it up onto its feet, doing the weapons pylons, and then we can move on with decaling, washing, weathering, and moving on like that. Okay, so we're all totally nice and dry on here, so now is the fun part with the actual decaling, where we're going to really bring this one to life. Now, I've covered obviously decaling loads and loads of times with other builds and that, so if you want to have a good look at, you know, some of them, pop onto the main site and there's some video tutorials on there about decaling and everything else. Just as a quick recap, what I like to use is micro set and sole solutions. Obviously you've got the blue one for popping it down first, and the red one is the sort of fixer afterwards. So we're just going to work around a couple of them. So what we'll do is we're just going to pop the shark mouth on, because the rest of it is all pretty standard. So we'll just grab ourselves some clamps. Dig some out. Here we go. So we're going to start with the shark's mouth, because obviously it's probably one of the most important. Face down in the water. Okay, just hold that down for a couple of seconds over in the water. Okay, bring it up, turn him up the other way, and we're going to let him sit. And we're going to flip this one over, and as you can see, we've got a couple of bits of blue tack on there. So we're just going to check our references to make sure we're all nice and with those, how it's actually going to sit and go. So the shark's mouth itself is going to sit behind the gun barrel. Okay, so when we're looking at this one, totally right. So what it is actually going to do is going to line up with this back one coming back here. So the back of it is going to fit along this front top grille on the front here. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just give this a slide on the paper. If it slips, then we're okay. Okay, we're just going to brush this first, get rid of a bit of that water with a softening solution. Okay, all around that area, because there is a couple of lumps and bumps we need it to conform with. And obviously if it's nice and slippy on there, it'll just make it easier to move around. Okay, so roughly we're just going to pop this into position. Okay, and then have a look, see how it's sitting and everything else. Okay, so we're just going to square it up now and just slide it into place, and we're happy how it's all sitting. We're going to look down at the references and see how it seems to be fitting. Checking against the side references as well, and looking at the panel lines to see how it's going to go. When you look at the side ones, it's got to come a lot further forward. Okay, so we just slip that forward just a touch. Okay, and we're checking the height difference on the side, so we know it's got to go over a little bit. Okay, and that's the mouth, shark mouth on there like that. Okay, happy how that is. So we're going to take dry cotton bud, just give it a bit of a wipe just to get rid of any excess that's around, excess water. Okay, happy how the location is and how the fit is and everything else. So what we're going to do, come along, dry our brush off. This is the setting solution, plenty of it. Okay, right the way over. Okay, now if it wrinkles up and everything else we said before, that's a good thing, because that means we're actually working. Okay, that's that one on just like that. And hopefully as well, if we have got any small little gaps here at the front, where we've sort of rounded that photo etching, it will take care of that and make that a lot nicer joint. So that's that one on just like that, and immediately it sort of brings this shark's face to life. Okay, so we've got that one on. So now we're going to pop the eyes in, which I think are the second most important for giving us our shark effect. So we're just going to go nose down with those little ones in there like that. We just grab another pair of clamps, and what we're going to do, we're going to grab these tail code numbers as well. Okay, we just stick them in some water. Okay, now this actual one, as those are doing at the moment, is absolutely covered. If you turn to the back page, you've got the stencil data, and obviously it calls out for exactly where every single stencil is on this one. When you look at the real ones, they don't seem to be covered in that much data, the stencil data, as perhaps it shows on here. So if you wanted to sort of pick and choose what you wanted to put on, then absolutely you could, or you could just put them all on, and I'm sure it would make it look absolutely fantastic with them all on. So there we go, that's our shark's mouth on there. So let's try and get an eye on the front. So we're going to grab a tiny bit of water, little reference picture back. Okay, so we're going to come up, pop the water on first. Okay, and then we're just going to come along with our eye, and obviously with the shiny bit of the eye, which is the reflection, is going to point sort of diagonally down just like that. And this is where you can sort of change his expression by moving the actual eye lid around and how it's looking, just like that. When you're happy about its location, roll off the excess. So there we go, that's looking just like that. Okay, and then obviously you can come along with a setting solution, just a drop over the top, just to make that sit in place just on the side. And there we go, that's our shark now coming tight. Now we've got the gill slits to go on, but we've got to do the other side as well. We've actually got the ladder one to go on, so I'm going to do them afterwards, which I'll talk you through when we get to that stage afterwards. But for the moment, what I'm going to do, I'm going to work my way through the entire decaling of this actual one. Okay, so there we go, that's the shark all on there and all done, and obviously we've got the decals. Now the thing is, looking at the reference photos, there doesn't seem to be much stencil data actually on the aircraft. Now this may be because obviously they put on the actual shark onto this one and everything else like that, but certainly it doesn't sort of show through with any of the reference photos, so I'm not going to do it either. It's probably because it had new camo and things like that for the actual meat when they did the tiger work. So obviously I'm going to go the same way and not put on many at all. It's got a few but not many. So mainly we've got the check markings all on. Remember, the red goes to the inside, that's why you get multiples of them. So when you put them on, obviously blue goes to the front and then red to the outside, same on the underside. So reds come inwards and then reds go diagonally down in the sort of 4 o'clock position and 8 o'clock position as well. So that's sort of an important thing to remember, because they only go one way on there. But there we go, shark on the front, looking very nicely. I've given this a coat of gloss and it's drying off now, so it's getting ready for the weathering stage. Now at the same time, what we've actually been doing is looking at this undercarriage. Now the undercarriage itself is pretty basic and we can liven this up a little bit. One of the ways to liven it up is obviously to use some of the resin parts. Now the thing is, and you might be able to see on the close-up here, the camera can lock in. Sorry about that, small camera trouble. But when you see this resin part like this one here, the thing is with it, it's got no holes and gaps, and it should have holes and gaps. And probably you can see down the back here, it should be just like that, obviously on the close-up. Now I've opened up obviously one half of it, you can see, but the other ones aren't opened up. So what we'd do is, we're trying to open these up. So easiest way is that I found, if you come along with a pin vise just like this, okay, and then all we're going to do is going to come into this leading hole. Now luckily this resin is quite flexible, it's not brittle like some of them, but what we're going to do is going to put 3 small holes in here. Now I know it's quite difficult for you to see on this because obviously I need to push in. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, and then another one into the 3 corners. Okay, it goes in like that. Then we're coming along with our knife, he says, dropping. Okay, and what we're going to do is join these up. Now I say just be a little bit careful how you go in and about all of this, because we don't want this to break particularly, because it'll be a pain to redo. So there we go, that's that one coming in just like that. Okay, then if you've got a mini drill or something like this where it comes into its own, or a little Dremel, you can get in here okay and just literally take out the excess, just like that. So then when you've done it, you end up like we've done on the other side here, with both of those taken out. Okay, so that's that one out. Then obviously these little slits down the back here, the only way to do this is to really cut them. Luckily it's very, very thin, so you can just slip a blade in and it should follow down like each one is doing here. Top one's always a problem. Okay, then once we're in, we can then just hopefully nip in and push them out, and once they're in you should be able to push them down a little bit, and once they're down you can get onto the inside, and a little bit of tapping around flicks them out just like that. So we've got the top one to do and the back, but that's a quick and easy way. This one is just to come forward a little bit more. And there we go, that's that one done. So obviously we're going to take care of that. The gear itself, what I did, I positioned it first, then glued it roughly, so it just makes it a lot easier to handle and to hold, okay? So then we're into that position, we're absolutely fine. So what we can start to do is get those together, get these painted up, put right. Now obviously we have got some masks, if you want to use them for doing the wheels, okay? Now the thing is with these masks is, we might remember we sprayed them all black. There is a nice raised edge on here, so you could individually pick them out, or you could just come along and actually mask up the actual tyre or the hub, whichever way you want to do it. I'm not sure if these will actually reach around the actual tyre itself. Let's pick one of these off. Let's say I'm not a massive fan of these. This is real personal choice on these things, but these never seem to lay, they never seem to quite go right. I prefer to almost get in, like this one seems to have stretched a little, makes it a little bit big, but you can mask them up like this and spray them all the way. To be honest, I'm going to do it as I'm just going to come in and paint these up as a separate, and then we can weather wash them as well. So we'll do them green, we'll get the undercarriage parts all done, and then we can start to get it together. Okay, so now obviously we've got decals on, they're all dry, all fine, no problem at all. We've gone along and we've put the gear on. To be honest, it's a bit complicated getting this gear in, that's why I've done it early, but what we need to do is get the doors on and the bits and pieces. Okay, so we're all progressing lovely until what happened was we got it on its gear, we were checking to see if it's all square, and then it's a tail sitter. Right, now this is something I must admit I didn't really think about too cleverly. Having never done this type of aircraft before, I assumed being, you know, obviously a good kit, they would have been called out in the instructions. They're not, and it's a tail sitter. And it's quite a good tail sitter like that. Normally, at this point, you would sort of panic and go, oh God, what am I going to do, and all the rest of it. Luckily, we've got two options with this. We can either pack some lead down the wheel wells, okay? We can come along, and obviously we've got the front end open where we're going to do this camera business and everything else like that, so we've still got an option in there. Okay, and the last option, obviously, we've got is this front wheel well. Now, luckily enough for us, because of FOD or, you know, obviously foreign rubbish being thrown up as this thing's on the ground and taxing around, the doors actually close over. So we've got to close this door up. So this is where good old-fashioned roofing lead comes into its own, he says. So all you have is your little lumps of lead that we've got here. And I was going to show you, and what this does is come off a nice big piece like this. Now big pieces of lead like this, it's quite expensive stuff these days, but if you go and speak to a roofer or something like that, like I tend to do, you just find a roofer doing his house and just ask him for some offcuts, and a piece like that, I think it cost me a can of pop or something like that I gave the guy for a big sheet, and originally it was a big piece like this. It's an offcut to them, but to actually go out and buy bits of lead and properly done things cost a little bit of money, and I've had this bit now for quite a while. It's nice clean. You can usually find other offcuts, really dirty ones that have come off the roofs and things like that, a lot cheaper if not free from a skip somewhere. Okay, but that's all I did. You come along, it's nice and soft, it's bendable, all the bits and pieces. All we do is come along, hack ourselves a piece off, okay. And then at a moment, what we're going to do now is really work out how much we're going to need. So we're going to go inside there, so we can roughly come along and say, right, okay, well look, we're going to pop a lump on the top. One small piece does the trick. It's no longer a tail sitter. What we do have to allow for though is obviously we've got tail planes to go on here ×2 that are going to fit right down the back. Okay, so they're going to weigh it down. So what I'm going to do to take care of the weight of those, we're going to double it. We've got fuel tanks. We've got some very large fuel tanks, these ones here that we did before. They're going to sit on, and obviously there's going to be a little bit hanging further back than the centre of gravity as well. So what I'm going to do is just to make sure, okay, we're going to stick in this amount here. So he says quickly grabbing his very out of date scales. Okay, so from a weight point of view, we just centre these off. Okay, so 9 grams of lead does it quite nicely, but just to be sure, I'm sticking on 15 grams of lead, okay, which will then stop this from being a tail sitter. So let's quickly get rid of that. So what we're going to do, we're going to flip this little guy over, okay, and then all we've done is scrunch this up into cube shape. So obviously it's going to fit nicely in this wheel well. So we've got one in there just like that, and then what we're going to do is just going to pop in a bit of super glue just each side. Okay, then we've got that guy gone in just like that, and then what you can do, just take your pliers and you can bend this stuff, and that's the great thing about it being so soft and pliable. Okay, that we can just get in here and then crush it to pack it down. As I say, you could come along with something like ball bearings and things like that and come along and poke those in here as well. But what we'll do, we're just going to poke these guys just down here like that. That one's just a little bit big. So what we're going to do, we're going to pop this one in like that. And then this one is still just a fraction too big in there. So we're just going to pop a bit of super glue. Okay, and this one just a little bit wide, so what we'll do, we'll just crimp it together, squash it together a bit. And that's the great thing with lead, it is quite pliable, so we can do things like this to it. Okay, and then we'll slip that down inside it. Okay, and then a bit more super glue, packing them between. Okay, come along, bit of kicker. Bit more of a couple of pumps in there. Okay, give that a bit of a blow just to dry that off, and then with any luck we can come along, pop it down, and we're no longer. Okay, so the thing is, we've putting on these doors. Main one goes in pretty straightforward up here, as you can probably see. The main gear ones, to be honest, they're really, really fiddly. So it's one of those ones, a little bit of dry fitting, it's going to go a long way. Now I haven't added all the activators just down in here yet. I'm going to put them on once the doors are on. What I've immediately had to do is just make this leading edge one just a tiny little bit bigger. So this is the other square one, if you like, that we cut away. I've had to draw it back a little bit so we've got clearance on the activator coming up. Okay, now when you first of all come along, and obviously this is a lot of test fittings gone into this one to make this one now fit. It fits perfectly, but what we've had to do is take probably about 1/2 mil off of this edge, long edge down the back here. Okay, we've taken a tiny bit off the front and we've just sort of reshaped it slightly to get it to go in. To be honest, the first one I made a bit of a mess out of doing it. This one went a lot more after I knew what was going on. So if you're on this long edge, take a sanding, take about probably 1/2 millimeter off here, 1/2 millimeter off the front, and you'll find it fits in a lot easier and should just drop in then and go in. A little technique you can do is actually put a blob of something in here, like super glue or something like that, just to make it sit in all a little bit better, and that way you can lock it sort of into position before you come in with the glue. But there we go, that's that sat in there just like that. Now it is grey, your eyes aren't deceiving you, but this is because obviously it's painted up the same as the main gear. Now using liquid cement, obviously we're dealing with other paints, so touch and flow situation here, just let it touch and let it do all the work. Okay, don't hang around or brush it, because obviously you're going to brush it away. But there we go, that's the main doors on there now. What we're going to do, we're going to put those activators in there. There's a couple more little ones to go in there, but we're not going to put the outer doors on there just quite yet. So there we go, that's those bits on now. Okay, quite happy how they're looking. So what we can do and let it to dry on there is to give it a wash. So what I'm going to do, really straightforward, just going to come along, dark dirt wash. Okay, bit of a shake around. Then all we'll do, we just quickly decant some into a little tub. Okay, nice fresh clean brush. Okay, we'll just flip this one over. And all we're going to do, usual thing, you've probably seen me do this 100 times before, on with the wash, and obviously it pulls up a little bit. Okay, all we do is just keep giving it a rub round, and you'll find it will work its way actually and smooth out. Okay, so we're just going to go absolutely away, and what this will do, it gives a nice bit of grime going underneath here. And then once this is on and off, we can actually then start on the fun bit, which is going to be adding a little bit more weathering with the actual airbrush underneath here. And then we can go along, because what parts we got, just as I'm doing here down the side of these intakes, we've got some more parts to go on here, photo etch, but I didn't want to do them until we'd finished this weathering with the wash, because being PE, yeah, photo etch, it's more than likely it's going to knock off or get pinged off when we're trying to do this bit. So I'm just going to avoid these areas obviously where we've done glue around the actual doors and things. So I'm just going to carry on with the wash now, putting it on everywhere. Okay, so you've seen me do this 100 times before, all totally dry now. So all we're going to do is very light moisture and rub the wash off. So say, if you start with light moisture, then you can sort of up it as you go. But there we go, that's the panel lines there on the shark's face, you can see, and everywhere else. And on the underside, we're going to do it very, very light, because you can see it's really hard to come off. But this is what we want it to do, because we want to give it that grimy texture. So you might be able to see there on the close-up, we bring it in a little bit, you get that sort of grimy effect to it, which is what we're after. So obviously, you know, if it won't come off quite as much, you can get in there a little bit more, but we're trying to get rid of all the major stuff off and leave some of the griming. And then obviously little techniques you can do down here on the back. You can leave quite a bit in there. We're not playing ball today. You can leave quite a bit in there just like that, as I say, or you can wet it a lot and take lots off. It's personal choice. Also, we've got in here, I've got some of the wash and it's a little bit thicker. And what you can do, you can just come along with it, place it in some bits, places like that, grab a cotton bud, and then just do oil streak marks, bits and pieces just like that. So those are quite a useful technique to do. If we show you one more on the close-up here, what you do, grab some of the wash, put it down, probably a little bit too much, and all we do is this type of streaking, because it will cling to various things and you can get that type of streaky oiled effect just like that. So I'm going to continue everywhere around the model and get the wash off.